Here at the Nigeria-South Africa Chamber of Commerce breakfast meeting for April, where the issues of tax costs and implications for Nigeria were discussed by Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, Senior Partner for PricewaterhouseCoopers, leading auditing and advisory firm in the country.
Once you have foreign investors showing more interest in Nigeria because of the size, they're going to be asking questions about how do I do business? Is it easy, including my ease of paying taxes? According to the World Bank and PwC survey of 189 countries around the world, Nigeria came number 170 on the ease of paying taxes, which means for the few who are willing to pay their taxes, it's a nightmare going through that process. Now, there are other issues to contend with. You have things around uncertainty of fiscal policy. The budget was presented to the National Assembly, they've now done all the reading, they've passed it. There was very little or nothing on fiscal policy, which means we don't even know where we're heading to. We just know that we want to encourage the local manufacturing and assembly of vehicles. We want to start producing rice locally. That's not enough. And that creates a lot of uncertainty for the business community. The pension reform has been reformed again. So the Senate has been passed, and the cost of your employment is going to go up. So the rates you were contributing as employers before, from 7.5%, is going to go to 12%. For employees from 7.5%, you're going to be contributing 8%. Now, we all need to think about how that will impact on our bottom line. Of course, you don't want to tell any employee your net pay has gone down. Whatever you do, you must keep the net pay at least at the same level. The state of multiple taxation continues. Everybody, every agency of government thinks it's easy to just impose 1% tax, 2%. And before you know it, the taxes are going up to 100%. So we should all just sit back and stop investing. So you have the Communication Commission introducing a levy, 2%. You have the Investment Promotion Council also, they have introduced their own 2%. And you have wrangling between federal and state governments, where Lagos State, for example, says, why should federal government be collecting VAT? It should be there collecting it. They lost first at the Supreme Court on technical ground. They want to go back and regroup and see whether they can win. Should they win, we should be prepared for the impossible. There are controversies around the jurisdiction of the courts. Can the tax tribunal listen to cases to do with federal taxes? That has not been resolved. As we speak, we have conflicting judgments by two federal high courts, courts of the same competent jurisdiction, giving conflicting opinion on how tax matters should be dealt with. Okay? And then you have arbitrary waivers and incentives that you get those things based on who you know, not because it's driven by any strategic economic policies. And that creates, in my view, some imbalances that some guys get undue competitive advantage over the rest of us. And therefore, that is not the way to stimulate the economy, create employment, and the rest of it. What should you be doing? Like Dr. Doyin Salami said, you should expect the unexpected. It's difficult to plan and say this is what we expect next year because nobody has told us anything. So you prepare for everything and anything. And in the middle of time, please pay attention to your tax affairs, special attention for that matter. And ensure that you do not settle tax matters under the table. They tend not to go away that way. You must do the right thing. You must be transparent in the way you handle your tax affairs. And where necessary, do tax planning to reduce the impact. And because this is a sales pitch, seek professional help. Okay? And of course, you know the place to come to is PwC. So I close with this quote of Benjamin Franklin. He said, in this world, nothing can be said to be certain except death and taxes.
Also, we went on to ask him about the issues of the rebased GDP in Nigeria and implications for taxations, and also a view and insight into the upcoming summit on the World Economic Forum that's focusing on jobs and inclusive growth.
So I think for tax purposes, the minister thought that
the ratio of GDP, tax to GDP was 20 before. I believe it was less than that because the FRS collected in 2013 about 4.8 trillion, the state government altogether about 600 billion, and the customs less than 1 trillion. So if you place that over our GDP before, it was probably about 12%. After the rebasing, it goes down to 7%. Now, 7% is much lower than the average you find even across Africa, where many countries are doing 24%, and some countries are doing up to 30%. So this makes it now very apparent that Nigeria needs to step up the compliance around taxation to be able to pay more taxes, and hopefully government will use that for infrastructure and for social services. So government is going to now be putting more pressure on the tax authorities to collect more taxes, and what that means is you and I and the business community will have to be the ones to face the consequences of complying with the tax laws.
And finally, this year in May, Nigeria will be hosting the World Economic Forum and looking at jobs, inclusive growth. What are those things that could be done between public and private sector partnership to enable jobs and inclusive growth in Nigeria?
Yeah, I think the best partnership is for government to create the enabling environment for the private sector to thrive, and not from time to time create imbalances in the way they either do not have policies or they have policies that are inconsistently applied. So for example, you find many times the only thing we have to say to investors is come to Nigeria and you get tax incentives. There's a lot of population, that's all. But people are looking beyond that. Investors are looking at the regulatory framework. They're looking at infrastructure. They're looking at security of their investment, even security of life and property for if they bring their staff, and so on and so forth. So a lot of things need to work together. And I believe the biggest role government needs to play is create the right environment and allow the private sector to thrive. On big projects like power, like roads, you can have PPP. We've seen something in Lagos that is working. Even though nobody likes to pay for driving on the road, but I'd rather pay and drive on the smooth road that saves my time than have a bad road where I spend 5 hours instead of 50 minutes.